Hi guys! Today I'm filming a video to review my top 15 books of 2020. There's some books that I read on my Kindle, so I'm not gonna have a hard copy for them, but I'm gonna put them on the screen over there. And I hope you enjoy. I'm gonna pull up my Goodreads account because honestly some of those books I do not remember that well. I just remember I like them, so I picked them up and put them in a pile. So throughout the whole year I read like about 40 books. Some of them are short stories that I read during my time in college, so I decided to do separate videos for short stories that I liked. But this is just going to be actually big books. A little background on me. I just started college this year and I'm planning to be an English major, so I took 2 literature classes this year. There are going to be some books from those classes. Okay, so the first book I have here is Sula by Toni Morrison. I'm sure a lot of you know, she has a lot of other famous novels like Beloved and The Bluest Eye, I think, but in my introductory English class, English literature, we were reading Sula specifically. I don't know why we chose this one. I think it's because my teacher is into the queer theory and like LGBT, like lesbian and gay representation and criticism. And this is also less than 200 pages, so that was great. I gave it a 5-star review. So this is a story about 2 girls. One of them is Sula, the other is Nell, and they're kind of like opposites of each other. So the story goes through from their childhood when they're 12 and all the way till they're all grown up. It follows like their friendship, or some people assume there's something more than friendship, but like it's up to you to decide. There's some like hints at their relationship, like a romantic relationship kind of. I interpret it as ambiguous because I don't know. It just seems more fun that way. Like you don't have to know what's between them. There's just some kind of human connection, and we don't have to know what it is. We don't have to categorize it as romantic or familiar or whatever. This has been a short read and it's been great. There's a lot of psychoanalytic stuff in here. I wrote my final paper on this book, so that was fun. My thesis was that Nell was the superego and Sula was the id in their relationship, and they're like part of one mind. So it's a really complicated story that has a lot of stuff to unpack. So if you're into that kind of more deep reading, I guess, check it out. The next story I have here is also from my other English class. So I also took Sexuality in Southern Literature, and we read Bastard Out of Carolina by Dorothy Allison. This is a story about a little girl. I think she starts when she's like pretty young, maybe like 8 or 7, I'm not sure. But basically it's a story about physical and sexual abuse, poverty, self-discovery, I guess. But most importantly, it's about sexual abuse and physical abuse because Dorothy Allison herself has been abused as a child, and she wrote this novel. It's a lot like almost biographical or autobiographical. A lot of what happens in the book is actually true and probably has happened to her. A lot of the emotions are definitely hers. So this is a really true book. If you want to get into this dark ocean that this book is. It was really sad to read, I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of heartbreaking, but the main character, Bone, she's a very strong girl. It talks about her finding herself, her passions, understanding her emotions, like dealing with abuse, and also her mother is not supportive, and she does not recognize the abuse that's going on. She refuses to recognize it. She refuses to recognize Bone's relationship to her father and what her stepdad is actually doing to her. So this is definitely a heavy book emotionally. I do not recommend it if you have any history or trauma or anything like that. I think it might be too heavy. There's a lot of graphic images in here, a lot of description of what is happening to her. But otherwise, if you're not afraid, I really recommend this because this has been a great read. I gave it a 5 out of 5. So yeah, check it out. I did not rate them in order from 1 to 15 or anything like that. I do have a few that are more favorites than others, but otherwise I don't have like a clear ranking for them. I do like all of them, so that's that. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I also read her other book, Sense and Sensibility, but I think out of the two I like Pride and Prejudice more. I finished it in like a couple of days. I was reading like almost non-stop. I did not expect to like it that much. I think it was one of the first few books that got me into classics this year. This year has been my introduction into classics because as an immigrant I have not read many English classics, so it was just something new for me. I mean, I don't think even people who study here read that many English classics. So anyway, Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, both great stories. The second one is about two sisters. They're both full of romance. Honestly, when I went into it, I did not like. I expected it to be a love story, like mostly focused on romance. But Jane Austen surprised me. I guess her characters are kind of like caricatures. She focused a lot on the time period and the different biases and different stupid things people believed back then. And she made her characters so pronounced. Right, so for some reason my camera stopped working. I think it might be low battery, but we'll just keep going and see what happens. So the next book I want to talk about is Knight of Geo. I got this recommendation mostly from Haig Booklyn. I think that's the name of her channel. She's one of my favorite YouTubers, so a shout out to Haig. So The Nightingale is a historical fiction piece on World War II. Yeah, 1939. So it takes place in France during World War II. It follows two sisters. Sorry, it's just like slipping out of its cover and it's making me uncomfortable. One of them decides to stay home. She kind of has to stay home because she has like kids. I don't remember what happened. So Isabel and Rianne, and they decide they do two different things, but they're both fighting, trying to survive, just in two different ways. And I personally liked Isabel's part of the story a little bit more, just because it was, I don't know, more dramatic. But I definitely understand Rianne and the fact that she had to do what she had to do, and I think her story was more like heartbreaking than Isabel's. I think Isabel's was hard, but she definitely had more freedom of choice about what she could do. Rianne kind of had to be there for her daughter. It's not like she could go and do stuff. Anyway, that's kind of a spoiler. I got this book from Goodwill, by the way. I mean, look at this quality of this. It's like perfect quality, and I got it for like, I don't know, like a couple of dollars or something. Like, it's in perfect condition. Like, Goodwill is kind of amazing, not gonna lie. But I moved, so I can't go there anymore because it's too far away. I used to walk there like often and get books, but I just can't. Well, my bookshelf is full anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now I understand YouTubers who randomly ramble on camera. Great book, 5 out of 5 stars. Check it out. Next on my list is Frankenstein. This is the last book I read this year. I just finished like a couple of days ago. And so I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it because at the same time I was trying to read Miss Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, but the writing was so dense. I got to like 20 pages, I think, and it was like going so slow, and I was like, I need to complete my Goodreads goal, which was like 40 books, and I was like, I need to read something else. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's like 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's more like 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's definitely not like the most favorite classic, but I still enjoy it very, very much. It was weird. So the concept, like at first I didn't know almost anything about Frankenstein when I started. Besides that, I heard from other YouTubers that Frankenstein is actually the scientist, not the monster, which is a common misconception. So just for that, just to understand this like common story, you should read Frankenstein. I think it's worth it. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. That's a kind of cool name, but kind of very confusing and tongue-tying. Anyway, so Frankenstein was definitely weird. I'm gonna do a full review on it later, like next week probably. I'm gonna do some research. I always do research after I read a book, and like some like first impressions that I had of this book are like, okay, so what's the point? But then when I thought about it deeper, like I thought about it, you know, I think it's very interesting because so the scientist Frankenstein creates this monster. He's very young when he does that. He's like 20 about years old, maybe even earlier, maybe like okay, around 20 years old. So he's like very young. He's like almost my age. Not like almost, but he's a little older than me. And he creates this monster and he basically just leaves him. So the monster just wanders around. He experiences all these things, you know, he learns the language and all that. And it's like just very fascinating to see his reactions, I guess, and see how he develops this kind of his own consciousness and morals. I'm like a horror freak. I can't watch horror or read horror, so Frankenstein's probably the scariest I'm gonna go. So the next one is The Greatest Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So this is the whole collection, so it's all of the books. Thank you to my best friend Adiba, she got me this book. So I got through the first two books, and I'm like 10% in, I think. I have a lot to go, gee. I think that's why I put it down, because like it's so big, like you just can't go through it. Like it has almost 1,000 pages, and like the font, I'm gonna show you guys something here. Where's the font? Like what? Like it's tiny. This book itself, it has the four main novels and 44 short stories. So hopefully I will get through the novels next year, and I will be getting through the short stories throughout my lifetime, I guess. So I haven't read Sherlock Holmes as a child, or I have not. I think I've watched like some of the parts of it. I don't know if I've ever watched like full movies. I tried watching the TV series, but I did not like it. But the book is actually really good. I really enjoyed the book, so you should try it. So the next book on my list is Caraval. Caraval's by Stephanie Garber. So Caraval was kind of like Night Circus, if you know what the Night Circus was. It was fascinating. I love like this kind of books. So it has this magic, and you're not sure what's happening. You're not sure what's real and what's not real. I know there are two, I think, more in the series, and I can't wait to read them, to be honest. But this follows also two sisters. I read so many books this year that follows two sisters. I think, and I don't know what happened. Like, I don't have a sister. Anyway, so there are two sisters, Scarlett and Tella, I think her name. So Scarlett and Tella, and then there's this cute guy who joins their team. So they have this very strict father. I think he might be also kind of abusive, I'm not sure. But I remember he was very mean, and he wants to marry Scarlett off to this, I think, random guy that she's been exchanging letters with. But then this guy, like random like sailor guy, arrives there on the ship. And then Tella befriends him, and she says, okay, let's get out of here. Like, I'm tired, I'm sick of this island. And they want to go to the Caraval. So Caraval is the faraway once a year performance where the audience participates in the show. So since they've been little girls, they've been dreaming of going to Caraval. And now they're afraid that once Scarlett is going to get married, like their dream is going to be over and stuff like that. So basically, they run away and go to the Caraval. And what happens there is a secret that I'm not gonna spoil. To know what happens there, you have to read the book. Next book on my list is A Book of Lost Things. I'm gonna put it up here in the cover. It's by the fuck knows. That's a little something. So the Book of Lost Things is by John Connolly. Connolly, I love Connolly's. I don't think they're spelled the same. The genres for this one are fantasy fiction, young adult horror, fairy tales, adventure, mystery, books about books, adult, and science fiction fantasy. I picked this one up at the library. I think my librarian recommended this back when I was still in high school. It was a surprisingly good read. It was very dark, so it was kind of like a dark twist on fairy tales. So this little boy who falls into this world of fairy tales. He's trying to get out. He goes on this whole adventure, and he meets like these different characters. And there's like Twister guy, like kind of like Rumpelstiltskin, kind of sort of, because one who tricked him. Or maybe they kidnapped the baby. Did they kidnap the baby? So yeah, he has this whole like thing with his family where his mother dies at the beginning of the book, and he gets a stepmom, and she has a baby from from his dad. I think it's a common trope or just a common occurrence, I guess. I don't have step parents, but from what I've seen in the media and books, I'm guessing that it's often like you feel bitter towards this parent who just comes into your family and kind of claims your other real parent, and David doesn't feel that his stepmom can be substituted for his real mother who died. It kind of deals with that and how he comes to terms with his new family. So David is violently propelled into a world that is a strange reflection of his own, populated by heroes and monsters and ruled by a fated king who keeps his secrets in a mysterious book, the Book of Lost Things. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 out of 5. And my review was, this has a quest feeling of Hobbit with a fairy tale twist. The book is so well thought through and so interested in its details. I just bow down before the author. The writing style is beautiful and almost reads like a poem or a song. At first, I was surprised and disturbed by some of the dark and gross imagery, but it does contribute to the disturbing mood of the story. It starts a little slow, but quickly accelerates once David crosses into the fairy tale world. The book combines the wit and wisdom of many fairy tales, and is certainly worth reading. So yeah, I found like a lot of fairy tales. I thought the way like he combined them was very interesting. I'm honestly like not feeling like I want to reread it. Also, it was very dark and kind of like a little bit sad because it's about the loss of innocence. It was a very well crafted book. I'm gonna say that. So it got 5 stars and it got into my top 15. So here's the next book. I think this was like one of my top 3 favorite maybe. So it's The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock, I think. So this one is set in Alaska in 1970s. It follows, I think, like 4 different teenagers. In the beginning, it has the cast of key characters: Bruce, Dora, Alice, Hank. Each character has like their little like family or like the list of the people they're connected to, and you can see all of them here. And there's a page for that to make sure to understand who is who and what is happening. Because to be honest, when I started reading this book, it was a bit confusing. So referencing this page is kind of helpful. Now, like I said, this is one of my favorite books that I read this year. So, and yeah, there's also a map where you can see like this whole journey because it's very location dependent. There are 4 characters, right? And sometimes they meet at certain places, and sometimes like they kind of like pass each other by, and so it's just very interesting, like the way they're interconnected. So this book has some historic points on it. The vocabulary was a little bit weird for me, at least. There were a lot of terms or words that I've never heard of before, but after I Googled them, I realized there are like specific words for different things that actually happen there, like in Alaska. So the book switches, so it goes like the first chapter is Bruce, and then Alice is a ballerina, Hank and his brothers run away from home, then Dora, I'm not sure what happened to Dora. Dora is the explorer. Basically, you follow like the stories of these 4 different characters, and they at the end they meet each other, and it's really fun. You should definitely check it out. It's also pretty short, so if you're the kind of person who like trying to get like to read more books, and you try to opt for short books, this is just 200 pages. So, and look at this beautiful cover. Like, how can you resist? Just like how, like even on the inside though, like. The actual book is like purple. Purple! This is my favorite color. So there's like a lot of reasons why I love this book. Okay, so the next book I read on my Kindle, and it was called The Humans by Haig. I think that's how I pronounce it. His newest book, The Midnight Library, has been the Goodreads Choice Award. I think it's funny that I read it just before Frankenstein. I mean, I think it would make more sense for me to read it after, because I think they're kind of like parallel stories. They're very similar in that they both take a character who's not human, and they kind of try to show humans and human life and how like try to experience all of that through this like other entity or other being. So like Frankenstein would be the monster. In the humans, it's the alien. So this alien guy, he's basically there was some kind of mass convention, and he said something very stupid, and they decided to send him to Earth to fix this issue that's been going on. So our hero is Professor Andrew Martin. The human Andrew Martin actually dies right when the alien gets into his body, so it's technically the alien. Sorry, it's middle. So it's technically the alien in Professor's body and the way he navigates life. So his task is basically to kill off everyone who knows anything about his discovery. So basically this professor solved one of the most difficult mathematical problems concerning prime numbers. So basically his findings would enable humanity to travel the universe and do everything that the aliens cannot do. So they're like, humanity cannot manage this, they've been progressing much faster than they can handle, and so they're sending one of their aliens to go and destroy all evidence that has been solved and proven, and so that's how this little alien guy gets on the planet, and then he starts going around in his body. The way he describes his human experiences are very funny. He also then reads Emily Dickinson and thinks she's a great poet, which I agree with because I've been reading Emily Dickinson this year too, and I've been loving it. I also watched the Dickinson show on Apple TV, and it's been amazing. To go back to the book, so The Humans was very funny and very insightful. Through the eyes of an alien, he shows that human life is worth it. He shows the beauty of human life and all the imperfection that we usually think about as like being the faults of humanity or the faults of human mind or emotions. He shows them as like the beautiful part of humans, what makes him love humans so much. So that's been The Humans. Next one is going to be The Orphan Train. So here's The Orphan Train by Christina Baker Kline. I think she also just came out with a new book this year, but I can't remember what it is. But it's also been popular. I think it's something about the Oregon Trail. So this talks about orphan trains which have been running in the United States between 1854 and 1929. I never heard about orphan trains until I read this book, and I'm going to tell you it's very fascinating. The trains ran regularly from the cities of the East Coast to the farmlands of the Midwest, carrying thousands of abandoned children whose fates would be determined by pure luck. So basically you get on this trail, you're an orphan, and then they stop at different cities, and there's like this showcase of kids. And then parents can come and pick someone if they like them. If a child is not picked, he just gets back on the train and goes to a different city. So the main character is Vivian Daly. I think that's how you pronounce her name. So Vivian is an Irish immigrant. She travels from Ireland to the United States with her family, and her whole family dies. She gets on this train, and then she travels around until she finds different families, and she's being handed from one family to another family until she finds where she can stay. And so it talks about her journey. But more than that, this book has two different main characters. The other character is 17-year-old Molly, who's also an orphan, and she lives with her adoptive parents, or they're not like her adoptive parents, so she's not been staying with them for long. She's been also like handed from one family to another, where she couldn't find a place to stay. She's about to obviously become an adult and try to find a place of her own in the world. So what she did, she stole a book from the library, and now she has to do community service. Her boyfriend finds her this old lady. Molly's job is to clean this old lady's attic, and in the attic are all the memories. And so like she kind of goes through all that stuff, and every time like she picks something up, we go back to the past and kind of like see where the thing comes from, what's the story, and what was happening to her at that moment, like at that time in her life. So obviously the old lady is Vivian. So we go back and forth between now and the past, and obviously mostly it's about Vivian's story, but it's also Molly's part in it is also very important because of her work at the end and because how Vivian's past helps her understand her own situation and how she perceives herself. She connects to Vivian a lot and they become really good friends, and it was like Vivian's story is very heartbreaking, but the way, like the ending, the way she ends up with Molly and how Molly helps her. She helps her at the end. I can't say how, but it's very heartwarming. It was a great book, and it's written very beautifully. It's about a lot of things. It's about immigration. It's about Maine. She describes a lot about the state and where everything is happening. The setting is described a lot, and it's not like I'm not a big fan of descriptions, so but I think her descriptions were very nice and enjoyable to read. So it's also about the hardships of Great Depression because it was set around that time too. Oh, also forget to mention Molly is an Indian American, so there's also about Molly's heritage and how she comes to terms with that. So my rating for the Orphan Train is 4.5 stars. Or I mean, I put 5 stars, but I put 4.5 is the actual rating I gave it. And my review is, oh my god, the feels. So many historical aspects included in this book. The heritage of Native Americans, the Great Depression, immigration in the early 20th century, World War II, the Orphan Train, Irish heritage, and so many interesting social issues and topics like losing loved ones, being an orphan, wondering about fate, dots connecting, rape attempt, giving away your child, the rights of women, poor versus rich, trying to fit in and doing what's expected of you, giving in to the circumstances. Obviously, it was centered around Niamh. Niamh is the actual name of Vivian, her real name, her Irish name. So, but also enjoyed the bits about Molly and the way the two of them connected. I also like how it felt real, how Niamh was only child who wanted to save home, not some brave, super intelligent kid who stood up to every villain and made everything right. I like how she was a victim of circumstances, her weaknesses and flaws, and the simple motivation behind her actions. So it's a very fascinating book. I recommend a lot. So one of the last ones is Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. It's a book about this very famous physicist who helped develop the atomic bomb. It's just about his life and his career. It's very funny. He's just a very witty character, and you get to learn a little bit about history and what's the time back then been like. It kind of like stretches throughout his lifetime, but I think the majority of the book is set around like World War II when he was designing the bomb. It's just very fascinating. It goes a lot into the process and like how everything. It does not have a lot of scientific stuff per se, but it does have a little bit of it. So if you're not like a science person, I would probably not recommend it. But if you're interested in math or science, or if you're just kind of like techie, or I don't know, just like kind of sci-fi-ish maybe even, like I would recommend. So here is my review for Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. Adventures of a Curious Character. I gave it 5 stars, and like I said, even though I got it too technical at times and I didn't know what he was talking about, the book overall was pure joy. The style is very simple, funny, and straightforward, and the stories he tells are truly hilarious. But even though the book is written like a collection of private jokes, it teaches you about the time in which Feynman lived, about life, and all kinds of things. He has other books which I might try and read because I really enjoyed this one. So the next book is also from my English class, same class I read Sula. This is called Howard's End by E.M. Forster. So I really enjoy Forster's style. I also read A Room with a View before I went into this class, and I was really excited to read the same author because I really loved A Room with a View. But I think I liked Howard's End even more. It is definitely thicker than Room with a View because the Room with a View was much shorter. So as much as I remember, Forster is gay man. So, however, he writes straight characters, which is kind of interesting. But back then, you couldn't write about gay characters that much. As you can see, I annotated a lot. Like, part of it was because I was reading for class, but also just because I really love his style, his voice, and there's a lot of quotable material in here. I'm a sucker for quotes. Basically, it's about two sisters again. Jeez, what the heck? I did not realize the amount of books about two sisters that there are and that I've read. But it's about the sisters Margaret and Helen. So Margaret and Helen, and there's a lot of feminist material in here. It deconstructs gender, and it's just a very deep book that you can study. There is a lot of criticism on it if you're into that kind of stuff. So yeah, recommend. So here's another book that made it to my top 15 list. It's called When Brass Becomes Heir by Paul Kalanithi. And it's about this man who was a neurosurgeon, and he died of cancer. So he was the one who was treating other patients for cancer, and then he died of cancer, which is ironic and very sad. His writing style was very beautiful. He was inspired to be a writer later in life, but obviously he didn't have that much time after he got sick, so that he dedicated a big chunk of rest of his life to writing this book. And it's very beautiful and very sad. It recounts his experiences, his fascination with life and death, and why he became a neurosurgeon and his past in life. I think it's very fascinating, a little bit kind of like Surely You're Joking, Mr.Feynman, where it's an autobiography, and it's very intimate, and it makes you want to live more, and kind of it helps you realize how short life is and helps you set your priorities. And some people has been criticizing that his wife actually writes better. She wrote the conclusion of the book because he died before he could finish it. The epilogue, I think. And some people are like, oh, your wife writes better. Yeah, kind of loser. So the last book before my camera dies, hopefully, is Little Women, another classic that I read this year. I think it was maybe the first one I read this year. I watched the movie first, and I was very confused because the timeline was like jumping. But then after I read the book, the movie made perfect sense, and I really enjoyed the book. I really like the character of Jo, and obviously she's a writer, and just enjoy her story. And it's just a beautiful feminist piece. And it talks a lot about childhood, about sisterhood. Oh my god, it's a book about sisters again. It might be because I watched a little bit too much of Haley, and she loves books about sisters, so what can I say? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe if that's something you like to do. I'm not forced, of course. Pulls a knife out. No. I'm not the imposter, promise. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found something that you like. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. And I love you all. Those who watched, thank you so much. And I'll see you in my next video. Thanks.